it's already getting out there by way of people getting excited about the idea and being part of the community. And obviously, you're seeing a lot of the names that are supporting Phenom are some of the bigger names in poker. Some of the more accomplished players in poker are getting behind the brand and supporting it.
All right, everybody. Today we've got on the podcast someone who's trying to change the way poker games are run for the better. Poker has a lot of problems, a lot of cheating going on, hard to deal with, no potential for high stakes, a lot of liquidity issues, a lot of getting money off, and all those sorts of things. And here's Matt Valeo starting up Phenom Poker and making a difference with all that, with the dream, and hopefully maybe it's possible we can get rid of cheating and make a site that's for the people and balances the incentives of both the people and the site owners.
Like innovating is hard. You know what I mean? Like it's hard to go and have a new idea and to challenge it in the marketplace and to get sometimes your idea is going to get flatly rejected by the market. Market's going to say, no, I don't care about your idea. And then you have to go and iterate on that idea and you have to fix it, or sometimes just scrap it all together and come up with a new idea. That's hard. So to answer your question, no, there's no state of being where it's like, yeah, like I'm just on lock, like I got it all covered. No, like I think if you're not getting humiliated from time to time, then you're not taking enough risks, and you're not pushing yourself to be the best version of yourself. If you have no failure in your life, if you have no humiliation, you're not you're too complacent. So I get humiliated constantly, and that's because I'm always trying to push myself and trying to find out where my limits are.
Oh, that's who would have thought some healthy humiliation is good every now and then. It's I mean, I might have to use that as a nice joke. Uh, well, it can be fun to be humiliated a little bit from a certain perspective, I guess. I guess looking for people who like to
Self-awareness.
get humiliated a little.
Well, self-awareness, I think, is one of the most valuable and like um, wide-ranging, useful skills you can have. It's very helpful in a wide variety of areas, from business to personal life and everything else. So um, yeah, like you gotta be willing to laugh at yourself sometimes, and like put yourself in situations where you're not just like always getting the best of it, right? Like if you really like to learn, surround yourself with people that are smarter than yourself. And like yeah, it's if you're in a group of friends where you're the smartest guy in the room, like yeah, it can be kind of fun to be the guy that everyone's going to for advice, and I can stroke your ego a certain way, and that's great. But if you really want to get better, then like sit in the group where you just know nothing, right? And like you're now absorbing the information, and I think that's going to pay a lot more dividends than the other situation.
For sure. Well, you presumably want to be able to give something because, like, then they might not want to hang out with you too if you're giving nothing as well. But yeah, as long as you're also contributing to the group in some kind of way.
Yeah.
I want to. Okay, so I want to ask, like, what lessons did poker teach you that you used for tech? Did you find it particularly useful for?
Absolutely, absolutely. Poker, like being a professional poker player, is an incredibly entrepreneurial experience, right? Like you are completely in control of your own destiny. You have to be able to manage your time, manage your money, take calculated decisions. Like playing poker for a living is really, um, it's really understanding the whole concept of like large sample sizes and making consistently good decisions as often as possible, right? That's going to yield a mathematically good outcome and a positive expectation of value, right? And that really applies to the game of life, including entrepreneurship, right? Like if you're going to start a company, you got to be very analytical in your approach. You got to go and understand the market that you want to go into. You have to understand how much it's going to cost. And even if you might be wrong, and you probably will be if you're a first time entrepreneur, you're probably completely wrong. But at least do the exercise of going, okay, I think it's going to cost me this much to develop the product. I think it's going to cost me this much to acquire users. I think it's going to take this much time. I think I'm going to have to put this much work in per day to yield this outcome. I'm going to need this many people. Like you have to do that mental exercise through all facets of the game. And poker translates to that quite a bit, actually, right? Because if you're playing poker for a living, you have to think, okay, well, what is my win rate in this game that I'm playing? How many hands do I have to play to yield to yield whatever outcome I'm looking for, whether it's a win rate per hour or per month or per year. Like you have to figure all these things out, and then you have to go in and execute. And that all translates really well. And I think being also poker teaches you discipline. You have to put in the work. There's no shortcuts. And that the downside to poker is it's not leveraged, right? Like it is if you're like a back player or whatever, you're playing outside your bankroll. But for me, I was never a stake or a back player. Like I always played with my own money. So um, it's all one to one. Whereas in a business, you can leverage your output, which is really fun, right? Because you can turn your time and your idea, your expertise into 10,000x returns, which it can't really happen in poker. I guess in tournaments to a degree, but it still ends up being per hour game unless you're just running way above expectation, right? So there's a lot of things that translate from poker to entrepreneurship for sure.
Yeah, poker's not very scalable, but it is a good way, I think, for people to make quite a bit of money to get to the point where they can become entrepreneurs. Actually, to now make it like kind of safe, and now they have a bit of the skill set. Uh,
Well, and
and
it might not be everyone's goal to go into entrepreneurship. I think, like
well, yeah, of course,
not everybody wants to be a billionaire, like I mean the
yeah,
idea of it might sound nice or whatever, but like, you can accomplish pretty incredible lifestyles for relatively reasonable sums of money, and you can certainly earn those sums of money playing poker. And if you can get to financial freedom and true happiness and understand the whole concept of like success doesn't necessarily equate dollars, right? Like dollars are a tool. Dollars are a
for
tool that we
sure.
use to buy time, right? We buy more time, buy more freedom. And depending on the kind of lifestyle that you want, that's important to you, there's so many paths to take it, and poker for many can be one of those paths.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean 100%. I mean, poker can lead to a lot of different paths, but I just think it's a useful bridge towards all the skills towards entrepreneurship. One of the hopes of the community that I'm launching, well, it approaches things from multiple angles. For one, I want to inject positive culture, which I think will be a massive impact towards creating positivity. And I want to ultimately be able to lead people towards entrepreneurship once I figure it out myself for the real crazy ones that want to do something that really does make a big impact. Um, so, yeah, that's one of the reasons why I built all this so that people can, get some ideas if they're bold enough to pursue these crazy ventures and really make a difference. And yeah,
It's
to
a
get a
it's a noble pursuit. I think there's a lot of people out there that have an entrepreneurial drive, but that don't know how to get started, or don't they feel like they're completely just like lost in the abyss of like, what do I do and how do I do it? And so it's one of the reasons I'm very interested in startup investing. I personally like to invest in, I don't like to go and participate in like the super competitive rounds where like the same group of Silicon Valley investors are all trying to compete and bid into getting these like crazy rounds. I like to invest in really the underrepresented founders, people like myself who come from like the middle of nowhere and didn't have any networking tech or anything. That's like, hey, I have this idea and I have the drive and I have the work ethic and everything. Like, I just need someone to believe in me, right? I've been there. I've been that person, and it's really, really difficult, really, really difficult. So I like to invest in people like that have all the traits, but they just need a little bit of direction, right? And they're willing to listen to advice.
Oh,
Um,
that's really nice. That's
yeah,
literally angel investing, by the way. That's literally the actual job of angel investing.
yeah. Well, I'm an angel investor. It's not my full-time job, but yeah, I like to. I'm not an institutional investor. I invest in my personal funds, and um, yeah, it's something that I enjoy doing because I enjoy kind of helping to share the lessons of some of the things I've learned, and particularly for founders who took a non-traditional path to get to wherever they are, and again, are willing to listen, willing to learn. Um, Not saying I have all the answers or anything like that, but it's like one thing that would have been really helpful to me is if I had like some of that guidance, and then I would have, instead of telling you like, well, you're like, how'd you do that? And I'm like, well, trial and error, trial and error. I would have been like, well, I had a guy who I turned to for advice, and they helped me. So I would like to be that guy.
All right. Well, I definitely appreciate that because I do think these types will need that quite a lot. And I mean, this reminds me actually, one of the things I was thinking of is if you like look at the the root of where does like even like the positive tech and all that come from? Where does like actual change come from? It comes from something like belief, simply whatever that is, or some kind of like force within that makes these things fucking reality. And I mean, that can be found within oneself. It can be found within someone else, but it has to come from somewhere. And if if you want someone else to be good or want someone to succeed, not only succeed in like business or whatever, but to be a good person, you have to have that trait of you have to believe in them, even if they've done like bad things. That has to exist. It's one insight that I've realized, and I try to remember that whenever I get like or get disappointed in people or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, I happen to believe that people are inherently good. Like we're not born like wanting to kill each other, or do like heinous things or anything like that. I think we live in a really complex society where a lot of unnatural phenomena occur that wouldn't occur in nature, and so people probably need a little bit more guidance to navigate the world as it is today. So the more people that are out there trying to give positive guidance, support, and help people kind of find their way, because the thing is like everybody makes mistakes. We're all human. None of us are like out there just like doing perfection. You know what I mean? Like, um, so we all need guidance and support, and we're also not built to walk the world alone, right? Like we're built to connect to other people, and to plug into social systems. And so, the more positive your social system is, it makes such a huge difference in who you are, by the type of people you connect to, and the type of people that you take in as your mentors, your guidance systems, things like that. It all matters. And I don't know the particulars of your idea, but if it aims towards producing positive outcome in those circumstances, it's something I certainly would want to support.
Oh, that'd be much appreciated. That is the ultimate goal. In short, I had a vision and I'm trying to recreate it. I'm actually trying to be more of a visionary than precisely an entrepreneur, but I need to be a bit of both. So, but yeah, that's the short term version. There's actually now today there's a saint entrepreneur, which I don't know if there's that many of those that have existed, but he kind of lives as a model of someone who is basically in many ways, the perfect entrepreneur. I mean, there's a couple that I think are almost the perfect entrepreneurs. One guy doesn't know that he is, I think, or is near it, that you've almost certainly heard of. But the first one I'll mention is Ravi Shankar. Like, there are many miracles around him. I've seen no evil from this guy at all, and that's something I like think I have is I can see people's inequities pretty easily. But he's a multi-hundred millionaire. He's basically a saint from India, and he's turned people who are like convicts in prison. He's like brought peace to Colombia, like shit like that. I'm like, shit, man, this guy's like really done some stuff. I got
Sounds
lucky enough
very
to meet
interesting.
him. Yeah, yeah.
Well,
But
maybe off air you'll have to tell me what my inequities are, because I'm always trying to find my leaks.
I don't see any right now. So there's
I
not.
said off air.
Oh, I mean, I have plenty of myself, but I
Oh,
know
we
what mine
we
are,
we all do.
or know what a lot of
That's
mine are, I should say.
we
Yeah.
all do. That's part of the human struggle, right? It's like we're born these like completely imperfect creatures, And we and then we're brought into the society where like we're going to be judged from every angle, and even and now it's even worse with social media and everything else. And so it's an incredibly difficult journey today,
Hmm.
to get out there and do the whole adulting thing, right?
Hmm.
So if you're not like constantly trying to like improve on yourself, it's very easy to get stuck, or fall into oblivion.
Well, yeah. I'm trying to be a kid forever. That's my plan. It's actually, uh,
It's a good plan.
yeah, at least in certain ways. But yes, try to mature forever. Try to be both. Try to be mature forever, but never stop being a kid. Um,
I love it.
I so yeah. One thing about Ravi Shankar is he says that he believes that all people are inherently good as well. He seems to really believe that. He actually had someone try to attack him. Oh, excuse me. Someone tried to attack him and pull a knife on him, like in front of everyone. He just kind of stood there. The guy like dropped his knife and started crying. There's
Oh,
another
wow.
story about him. I thought that was inspiring. I mean, if you can turn the bad guys, it's yeah. Um, but he's the obvious one. I mean, another one. I mean, at least there's a couple guys that run businesses that are effectively sound perfect to me. I mean, from what I can tell, the other one I was thinking of is like Alex Hermosi. You must be familiar with him. You're not?
That name sounds familiar, but I would have to
No,
look
he
it
sounds
up.
familiar. He sounds familiar. Yeah. He's what he's doing is like. I mean, this is from what I can see. It's one of the biggest ways to create a positive impact is what he's creating is. Well, he created. He became like 100 billionaire from gym sales, I believe. And if you look about his methods, they seem to be the perfect union of marketing and like
What?
execution, from what I can tell. He is now taking businesses that are worth 3 million, and he's trying to build on top of them and make them like huge businesses. And he's trying to help the growing businesses to that level to do that. So that's like creating a bunch of like super effective companies, uh,
Hmm.
which I thought was a really cool idea. And then there's a guy named Ray Dalio, which you've probably heard of. Have you heard of
Yep.
him?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Sure. He's very
and
famous.
yeah. It's more obvious, but at least in my opinion, he runs the most. It sounded, at least from what I could hear, the most perfect fund that could be run. Like everything he does, he seems to handle everything perfectly. But or at least now he does. But yeah, those are the guys I was thinking of. They all like take all these like principles that are difficult to apply and put them into reality.
Yeah. I
Which it
mean,
sounds like what you're trying to do with yours as well.
well, I mean, I think any entrepreneur that wants to build a company, wants to build the perfect version of that company, right? And
Mhm.
that's probably what everyone aspires to. But
Well,
since perfection doesn't like isn't part of the human condition, it's just they're all just going to be completely unique, right? Like I personally believe in a lean approach, smaller teams. I'm a big believer in culture, and I think that a small team that's melding, meshing really well, that get that truly enjoy what they're doing, can outperform teams that are many times their size. It was a wonderful experience to see that actually put into practice,
hmm.
with the first company I founded. Like we did a Series A with only 12 people. We were profitable. We were at a $3 million run rate and profitable. When we did our Series B, we were 24 people, and we were doing a $6 million run rate and profitable. So
Oh
our
wow.
counterparts that are raising those rounds, oftentimes they're in the hundreds of people. We were also remote only before everybody was doing it. Before COVID, we were already remote only. No physical headquarters. So there's a lot of things that you have to figure out, a lot of nuance in like assembling a geographically diverse team, to figure out how to get them to work together, to figure out the right types of people to fit into the culture that you're trying to build. I'm striving for perfection, of course, but it's like my idea of perfection might be completely different than Ray Dalio's idea of perfection, or Elon Musk's idea of perfection, or Jeff Bezos' idea of perfection, or we all might have our own completely different ideas of like what the perfect company looks like. as we should, because there's no such thing as a perfect company, right? Because a company is nothing other than a group of people trying to achieve a common goal.
Sure.
And if people are in the equation, you're already going to start off imperfect.
In this case, I was saying, I was factoring in like applying morality to all of it
Hmm.
in a way that also optimizes for results, optimizing both results and morality. That's what I was thinking of, which is a very difficult. It requires a tough union. Like you said, a good culture is one of the things that is for sure required, which is um, something I feel like is a little bit underrated, at least with the people that I know. Um, and yeah, I mean, you do make a good point about like everyone's idea of perfection is different, and I don't think there's really like a true perfect in the sense like there's no true perfect poker game, but it's the overarching principles that lead towards these things, of course, where they're like applied continuously.
Striving for perfection is I think worth. It's a concept that's worth doing, but like with the understanding that it's not achievable. You know what I mean? Like always be working on yourself, always be
Yeah,
striving for getting better. But like no one's ever going to golf an 18, and if they did, then golf would no longer be interesting. Just like if you win a poker and you started winning every pot, like sure you'll be like insanely rich in a very short period of time, but the game would no longer be interesting. The thing that makes poker interesting is that it is unbeatable. Like you cannot beat variance. Like you can win in poker, you can um, have an edge and extrapolate that edge over large sample sizes. But like you can never just conquer the game, right? You can't just like go in and win every single pot you play. That's not a thing. And for that reason, it's like it actually lines up really well with the human condition because we are inherently imperfect creatures, right? Like
hmm
we want to be perfect, but we'll never be perfect. Like we want to win 100% of pots. We know we can't, but that doesn't stop us from trying to win the next pot every single time, right?
hmm Yeah, I mean, actually, I was thinking about something quite similar. Is that I mean, I always wondered the question, why is there? I mean, many people wondered, like, why is there evil, for example? Well, you kind of answered it actually, um, which is basically a lot of things just wouldn't exist if there was no evil, and there wouldn't be no good actually if there was no evil. As
That's
a matter of
true.
fact, uh, I mean, that's just it can be abolished, in my opinion, at least within controlled environments, including the world, but very, very difficult. And maybe not inevitably, but yeah, I mean, I think one thing that I realized is that we all want to pursue, or not everyone wants to pursue the truth, I guess, but the truth is only interesting because it's unknown. Uh, and good is only interesting because something bad existed in the first place.
That's true. There's a lot of truth to that.
Now, why don't you tell us how to get the perfect soulmate or whatever, the perfect partner? Shit, that's something to solve.
I wish I had a solution. My solution to that was I just got incredibly lucky. Like
Well, it's hard to do that.
that's the truth. If there was some formula or button or they do this and you're gonna like I would gladly share that information. Or I hopefully would have been smart enough to stumble upon that, a long time ago. But my story is not that dissimilar from many others. Like I was in mostly unhealthy relationships my entire life, and just kind of assumed that that was just what relationships were just like these massive compromises, and that didn't ultimately make sense on a lot of levels, and a kind of I thought that like marriage was just a bad proposition, and like wasn't really pursuing it, and then boom, I bump into like my perfect partner, just and everything clicked and aligned, and it was like, oh wow, I didn't even know this was a thing. I didn't know there was just like you can just be happy every day, and while also sharing a life with somebody, you can have like perfect support system and alignment and just everything it becomes effortless. I didn't know that that was a thing. I thought that was mostly just a thing in movies, and it was complete bullshit. Now, obviously, I think otherwise. You know, I'm happily married, and my daughter was born 2 days ago.
Oh
So
yeah, congratulations.
thank you very much. And yeah, unfortunately, I don't have an answer in terms of like, well, how do you get that? I don't know. I don't know. Like, get really really lucky and meet the right person. What I can say, now that I have it, is I was wrong in that this thing, like, I was basically of the opinion that like going and finding the perfect partner is like a completely pointless endeavor and pursuit. It's just gonna like you're just gonna waste a ton of time trying to find this thing that probably doesn't exist. And now I have a very different opinion of that, and that is like it's absolutely worth pursuing. Um, and it's almost like a cheat code in life. Um, and it's very relevant to the conversation because if I didn't have that partner and that support system and um, I probably would not try to do another startup because startups are incredibly difficult. I'm very fortunate to have, had the experience of starting a successful company and going through the many phases of building a company from, ideation to doing millions of dollars in revenues and, institutional investing rounds and things like that. Like that was an incredible experience. Um, but I probably wouldn't have done it again without having that support because it is a huge commitment. It is huge sacrifice. It is incredibly difficult. It's incredibly, it's especially a difficult journey for a founder or a CEO. Um, but here I am again, and I'm enjoying it. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of sleepless nights, but um, it's very rewarding, and having the right partner to prop me up it's like a cheat code. That's the best way I can describe it.
Oh wow. Well, yeah. I mean, I've heard that it seems to make a massive difference in
Oh gosh,
performance.
it's there's no way to overstate it. And if you read books or blogs or writings from entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, it's a recurring theme. They'll tell you like, how did you do it? And like, wow, you built a multi-billion-dollar company, and everyone wants to know like what. And you'll see it over and over and over again. Like, yeah, like it was the team, it was my wife. Like, without those things, I would have crumbled many, many times. And that really resonates. That really resonates with me. So, and I saw it. I've seen it so many times. You'll see it constantly. Like, Bill Gates talking about, building, Microsoft or there's many. I mean, not every one of them obviously is happily married, but there's many, many that'll throw a lot of credit into, and obviously it can be done. Like you don't have to have, perfect life or whatever to be successful in life. That's not a requirement, but what you'll hear from a lot of entrepreneurs is like it makes a massive difference, and I can relate to that
Right.
because
Sure.
I've done it. I've built a company while being in a not healthy relationship, and I'm building a company being in
That would not be fun. That would be the opposite of fun. In
yeah,
a not healthy relationship.
yeah, and now
uh,
I'm doing it in a healthy relationship, and I can tell you, from just like a stress level perspective, from how you feel every day, it is such a huge difference. It's like it cannot be overstated how big of a difference it really is.
that makes quite a bit of sense. I have heard the same thing. I have some thoughts on the subject. Um, see if you agree or not. But I also want to ask about the sleepless nights thing. Like, did you find ways of getting your sleep together? Just because I would think that one thought I had was like I thought that I could with my sleep a lot, but it feels like my body just like vetoes that idea. Like I just end up getting the sleep somehow. I almost like trick myself into it, and it just seems like one realization that I had is that even in like poker, if you're on very little sleep, your bottom line decreases so much that like it was like the one thing that actually really affected me while playing. And if it's so low, it becomes really profitable to all of a sudden just get like a little bit of sleep, and just less than zero sleep, if you know what I mean, even like a couple hours or whatever. If you really have to have no sleep or very little sleep, how did you,
Yeah, so
yeah, did you bounce at all?
I'm someone that has actually suffered from low sleep my entire life. Like even when I
Oh,
was 6 years old, um, like my mom would come in my room, I'd be reading, I read a book every day when I was a kid. Um,
oh, really? Oh, shit.
yeah, I was like completely introverted, analytical, like reader, math, like reading and math was everything to me. Um, so a lot of my social skills, leadership skill, like these are acquired, not natural state of being for
Right.
me. And I also suffer from low sleep, that, doctors basically attributed to just having like a very active mind. Um, I've tried everything, medication, meditation, like you name it, I've tried it. And I eventually came to the conclusion that like I'm just kind of wired a little bit differently. And people would come and argue with me. They'd be like, they'd say like, how are you always awake? How like message you, like Alex Torelli's someone actually recently said that um, like we met up in Vegas like several weeks ago, and then he went to Milan and I came to Madrid, and he's like, I message you at different hours of the day, and you always snap respond. How, like, when do you sleep? And I'm like, well, some nights I sleep 3 hours, some nights I sleep 2 hours, some nights, if I'm lucky, it's 4 hours. Um,
Now
and
you get
he's,
this. What the?
yeah,
That
and
doesn't work though.
well, and so I do have to get some sleep. Otherwise, I like my brain will suffer just like anyone else's, but I don't get as much sleep as the average person. And what people would tell me is they'd be like, dude, you're going to like grow plaque in your brain and die. Like you need more sleep. You just medically, this is not possible, sustainable, whatever. And I'm like, well, listen, I've been hearing this shit my whole life, and I've been outproducing and outproducing people my entire life while sleeping less. So what do you want me to tell you? Finally, it was just this last year, I was playing poker at Resorts World. I think I was like in some tournament. Um, I'm not a tournament player. I don't play a lot of tournaments, but I hopped in some like a 1K or something, um, and I was talking to this lady, um, and somehow the conversation of sleep came up, and it came up like I don't sleep that much and everything. And then she sent me this article, and she's like, "Oh, well, they did studies recently that there are people that get less that can get less sleep." And like the traditional way of thinking is like all humans need 8 to 9 hours of sleep to be optimal. And otherwise you get plaque in your brain and you die and whatever. So or you die early or whatever, right? And she sent me this thing, and I read through this article. It's like, oh my God, that's me. It literally spelled everything out to a T of described me and my sleep patterns. And basically what this research study came up with is there are certain people um, that can sleep less while functioning at the same level. And they're able to produce like some chemical to a different amount, and their chemical balance is a little bit different, but that they actually live longer and they have like all these other like kind of benefits. And the medical community is trying to understand the genetics of those people. So I'm now of the belief that like I'm in that group. I know what works for me. I know how much sleep I need to be alert and productive and everything. It's around 4 hours. I mean, like 6 hours is optimal in terms of like I'll feel very physically refreshed and like okay, I got a lot of sleep. But if I sleep 4 hours, I can get up, be perfectly alert, be perfectly fine. I don't need any stimulants, and I'll function like nobody would ever know that I was tired or anything. Um, and so, yeah, it's another one of those things where like I don't have all the answers, and I can't even say definitively because I haven't actually gone and participated in the sleep study, that where they're studying this particular condition. But I'm of the belief that I'm just wired a little bit differently, and for me, the optimal amount of sleep is much less than the average person.
Is this? Well, I can believe that. I want to know if it's learnable. My personal guess is it is, but maybe people don't know.
Well, according to the study, it's genetic, but it
Well,
doesn't sound like they actually if you want, I can go through my text to find where she sent me the link.
Yeah, why don't you send me? I think sometimes I found that there are times where I don't need much sleep. I mean, it would be like 6 hours ish, maybe a little bit more, if I'm really honest. I don't think I'd go lower than like that on average over a long period. Unless I'm like, I've definitely found that when my brain's really active, I don't need so much sleep. I'm trying to like learn this 4 hour sleep thing, but one thing I realized was that if you can't control your energy, like it doesn't really do much good. But definitely if you could discipline your mind, which is why going to India, I'm gonna put in some effort towards that at least. I don't think I'm gonna do it in 1 month, but
I mean,
um,
that sounds really interesting. What are you, so are you you're going on like a yoga retreat or like what is this Indian
oh,
thing you're doing?
all right. So yeah, I'm going on 2 yoga retreats. Yeah, I mean that's gonna be part of the thing. I mean I put in some effort towards this, but not serious effort. One of them is going to be really focused on yoga and meditation, that stuff. And allegedly, it goes further in the Himalayas. Well, supposedly that's where the energy is the best. I don't know if that makes sense or not. But guess what? I want to go there anyway, and I wanted the experience. And where could possibly be a better place than that? So, yeah, that would be the ultimate asset, I think, is a truly disciplined mind.
When are you going to Tibet?
Well, I am also going to Tibet, by the way. I'm going to Tibet in May, but this is India.
That sounds awesome. So Tibet is somewhere I've traveled a lot. I've been a lot of places, but never been to Tibet. And well, you've mentioned it a couple times that you have thoughts on like finding the perfect partner and all that. But we haven't heard those thoughts yet.
Oh,
I want to
I was
know.
also okay. All right, so I think it's a bit of a challenge. So, like in spirituality, there's this ideal idea that your perfect partner is your opposite side of your soul or whatever, and it's like, okay, what the hell does that mean? Someone that perfectly completes you. But at some point, it hit me that, or you're equal and opposite kind of thing. So one thing is that your values and your life purposes, I presume, would have to be aligned in the same direction. So you'd have to be equal in that respect. You'd have to be equal in terms of other vectors, such as how attracted you are to each other, like things like that. Like that would have to be pretty equal. You have to, and then what would have to be opposite? I think that's important because I think that's part of how attraction works. Like there's masculine and feminine. Well, masculine and feminine exist because duality exists. Like without duality, such as good and evil, there would be no texture to the world, right? And you see this recurring theme in spirituality over and over, but it makes sense. And as far as this is concerned, I presume your equal and opposite would literally be represent the opposite ends of duality that you would have, and that would be like if you're the one who's out there taking action, they're the one who's supporting you. For example, that would be the opposite end of that, right? You would ideally not want to have two like powerhouse action takers going on because they're just going to be like not really aligning a lot. They're going to be doing their own thing. I think quite a lot. I would think, and you would want someone that has the opposite kind of roles as you. And actually, um, when you think about it, there's not really a role that is any less or worse than anyone else in an optimally functioning world because because like basically everyone just kind of has their role, but they also have the benefits or not the benefits in an optimally functioning world. Well, this is something that I personally thought about a lot. Like rewards come also as a byproduct of duality, right? It's either you are who you are or you're not, in a sense. Does this make it? Are you agreeing with this in any at all?
Um, well, I don't know if there's anything to disagree with. I think a lot of people try to like construct the perfect partner on paper and they have a different ways of going about it. This would be a similar approach of saying like in idealistically, um, you have like you're like one whole and you just like do the yin and the yang and you say like you're just this like opposite ends meet and now you're like and that's kind of but in the real world of like meeting and finding this partner that doesn't really help you too much, right? Like, what do? You're going to make a profile and say like, I'm this. I need my opposite end of this. Um,
Well, I think
how do
it's
you actually find that person? And the
uh,
reality is we're much more complex creatures than that. Because yes, if you're going to share a life with somebody, you have to have some complementary roles and qualities, right? Like you have to complement one another, and if you're exactly the same, it's not going to work. You're going to butt heads. And if you have the same, if you're doing the same thing, you have the same role and responsibility in a relationship, and it's like, well, who's doing the other shit, right? Like so yes, there needs to be some of that, but the thing is like human beings, we're not simple creatures. We're very unique social creatures. So um, a lot of it comes down to complementary traits, sure. But it also comes to like being able to meet each other's needs. And this is where it gets really complicated because on paper, you might have two people that look like perfect mates for one another on paper, but do they have the same love languages, right? Like you take a test and you say like one thing my wife and I did, and this was just random. We were with a friend and yeah, he had this like love language test. And he's like, oh, take it. We took it and we came out exactly the same. We had the same love languages in the same order, the same percentage. And it was like, that makes a lot of sense because we didn't try to do that. We both like to give and receive love in a similar fashion, right? Which is really helpful with a partner of yours. If you, for example, like to primarily receive, your love language is physical touch, right? You might have like a really high sex drive, and you might feel very close to your partner, whatever, like sex when you're having a lot of sex or whatever. And your partner is like, no, I like to receive gifts, and I don't like to have a lot of sex. Well, even if on paper you're perfect for each other, guess what? You're already going to have problems already, right?
right,
Because your needs not getting met and her needs not getting met, right? And now you're trying to go and meet her needs in a way that's unnatural to you, and she's maybe trying to meet your needs in a way that's unnatural to her, and that might not be sustainable. That's just one
right,
example, right?
yeah,
um, and so yeah, then comes like the real life stuff also, right? Like you might on paper be a good match, but you might not want kids and she might want a family. Well, throw that out the window, because now one of you has to make a pretty gigantic compromise, so, and that's
yeah,
that's why I think, constructing a perfect partner on paper or in theory is, generally speaking, kind of a pointless exercise. I think
right,
that, you need to meet people, you need to spend time with people, and it's either going to click and it's not going to click. And that's why I said I have no perfect answer here, because I met a lot of people, I traveled, I've dated, I did all those things, and it never clicked. It never truly clicked. And then I
so
met someone and it clicked. And I was like, oh, holy shit. Like, and I didn't do anything differently. It just, I'm a very unique person. I'm wired differently, as you probably figured out during the course of this phone call.
mhm,
So, I required a very unique partner who's also wired differently, and can complement me in the right ways, but also be aligned with me in the right ways, right? Because I was with someone for 12 years where we were complete opposites, and it did not work at all. I'm a spontaneous person. I like to travel. I like to learn. I like to grow. I like to be challenged, it was with someone who likes to basically stay still and don't learn and don't go anywhere, and like I could never understand how this could be a fulfilling existence for somebody, right? Like it was very
right,
frustrating for me, um, to try to move myself to that end of the spectrum to appease someone who just, quite frankly, just didn't want the same things out of life that I did. And I don't have that problem anymore, right? Because we both want to go in the same direction. We're not forcing each other into that direction. It's the direction we already wanted to go in individually, and now we team up, and now we're going in that direction together, and it's really nice. So anyway, I'm not trying to like discredit everything you're saying. Um, I think it's good to have a thought process to like figure out what you're looking
um,
for, what the ideal partner looks like. But I also think it's very difficult.
s- so there's multiple things to say about that, and I have thought about that a lot too. So to answer your question, I'm answering things from the point of absolute perfection, which is almost unattainable,
Sure.
as if to say the final thing, in which case those love languages, etc., would probably align as well, but I don't know. I can't prove that that can actually happen, but I mean, maybe it can. But one thing is that, okay, in fact, someone said something to me that relationships were for the sake of growth. And at first, I thought to myself when I heard that, oh, that sounds like it sucks. That's unfortunate. But actually, when I thought about that more, I came to the conclusion. It seems like you have some thoughts on that. I came to the conclusion that, in fact, this is necessary and this is required and this is good. What is good is not always what people think it is. People think this idea of like good being, oh, there should be no more evil. And sort of is the answer to that. Yes and no. It should have existed in the first place in order for there to be good, but yes, we should be removing it. And in this case, the relationships, yeah, I mean, kind of like what you're saying, like all of what you're saying are just like courses in the sake or that move things towards evolution. Like the primary purpose of relationships, even the perfect one, by the way, which I would think does come with some difficulty or whatever. Um, Even if like things are basically working, like overall, like pretty great, would still be for growth. I would think. I mean, this makes like a lot of sense to me, and this aligns also with the spiritual perspective as well. And a lot of relationships are just going to be basically trysts or whatever they are, or just not really serious ones. I mean, what are your thoughts on that perspective?
I think if you're looking for a life partner,
Hmm.
like someone to share a lifetime with, then growth is a huge part of the equation because we're not static creatures, right? Like the 12-year-old version of Jungle Man is a completely different person than the 16-year-old version of Jungle Man, which is a
Oh
completely
yeah,
different person than the 25-year-old version of Jungle Man, and so on and so forth. So, we are evolving, adapting, growing creatures, right? And not everyone does growth the same way. Some people hit a certain age and then they just kind of stay the same person for the rest of their lives. Well, if you want to have a successful partner during that journey, then you need to find someone who also wants to stay the same person, right? Because like that version of you is going to stay static. Then you need someone, you need to find the ideal fit for that version of you. And then that person not only has to be a good fit for you now, they have to be a good fit for you later, which means they have to
right,
grow or not grow with you at the same rate over the same period of time. And that is the difficult part, right? It's actually not that difficult to find somebody who can be a great match for you in the short term, right? Because if like
sure,
you're like, hey, I'm a single guy and I'm having fun and I just want like good sex and good meal and a good time. In the best of circumstances, like finding a woman who's going to be good for you for that kind of period, for that period that's not that hard, like maybe if you're spending every minute together, that, maybe that's challenging, but like it's not all that difficult to find a woman who wants to like travel with you and be in the best of circumstances and everything. It's very difficult to find the woman who's going to be with you through your high points and your lowest points and your middle points and everything else, right? And to do it for a sustained period of time. So, which is why growth, if you're looking for a long-term thing, is huge. So, this is why you have to look out into the future and say, like, okay, well, this in the current version of myself and the current version of her, we match really well. But like, I'm still learning and growing and evolving and adapting, as is she, right? So like, are we growing in the same direction? Are we moving in the same direction in life? Are we moving at the same velocity? And if the answer is no, odds are it's not going to last. You're going to run into a point where the version of yourself at some point in the future does not match well with that version of herself in that same point in time. And you can either stay the course and be in probably a relationship that's not ideal. Many people do that, right? You see them that they don't seem like great fits, but they just say, well, yeah, I'm too vested in this. I'm just going to keep going. Or you end up with a split or fracture, right? And you have to, probably make a difficult decision, for yourself and your partner. And that's, I mean, and that's why, this whole thing is really, really hard. And throughout human history, I don't think anyone's ever come up with a perfect answer to this, to how to find the perfect partner and how to identify that. And it's an extremely complex equation.
well, I realized that it's actually better to go slowly towards this idea of perfection, but not to just zip towards it. Um, because then it's like things get gradually better, uh, that kind of thing, and you enjoy things more. And it's yeah, if you just go straight there, you get there, and it's like, oh well, now what?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's tough. Like to find someone that wants to go that not only fits the current version of you, but that wants to move in the same direction at the same velocity with you and invest into you as you invest into them to get that outsized return. Like that's the whole point of like partnering for life, which is like monogamy, like we discussed over text, is not a naturally occurring phenomenon, particularly amongst human males, right? So
Right.
like what? So if it's not natural, why would I want to do something different? Well, because there are returns that that you can only get by putting in the time and investment into somebody, right? Like there's some
Mhm.
enormous benefits that can be yielded from someone who truly understands you, and has traversed difficult experiences with you of life and has seen you in your worst moments and has helped you up from those worst moments and vice versa, right? There's certain returns you can get by helping somebody and growing with somebody and um, that simply can't be replicated from like short-term trysts, and dating and things like that. And it's like
Sure.
it's kind of like trying to piecemeal happiness. You know what I mean? It's that's a
Yeah.
in theory or on paper, maybe it kind of works, but in reality, it doesn't really work. Piecemealing happiness. Like you have to make big investments into yourself and into personal growth and to even have a chance at happiness, right? And that's you know like and it's all related, entrepreneurship and all that kind of stuff. There's like a certain level of insanity to like starting a company when you have other options. But there's certain levels of fulfillment that you could only get from like building a successful company, including some of the leveraged outsized returns that can come with that.
Sure. All that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I do see like yeah, from monogamy you can only gain certain things that otherwise not gained. That being said, I do wonder how it actually does make sense that monogamy is very close to almost monogamy is close to a moral solution actually, which is what intrigued me. In fact, many of the kings in the past used monogamy to keep society in check. Although, in fact, there's some evidence that because it's no longer the norm in some Western countries, it's kind of wreaking a lot of havoc. And in fact, precisely before, uh, when the one of the biggest traits before societal collapse is too much of an inequality in the sexual market, meaning that many guys go without partners. Well, rightfully so in a way, because why should they support a society that doesn't give a fuck about them? But we'll see how that turns out. You know what I
Well,
mean? Like,
like
huh?
I think we're in a period of genetic devolution, um, and that combined with declining birth rates are the biggest threat to our species. And I think it's not talked about nearly enough. It can wipe out human existence if we continue to genetically devolve and and while simultaneously having declining birth rates as a species, it's like disastrous for any species.
In fact, monogamy also is better for evolution. It appears because if you imagine someone who has the opposite trait of like spreading their genes through everyone, it means basically more. It means it creates an environment for a lot of unstable people, unstable children being raised, and in fact, this creates more pain, et cetera, et cetera. So, ironically, it appears that monogamy even makes the most sense for the sake of evolution. Now, a lot of these unnatural things are only unnatural from a certain perspective. These moral solutions actually appear to be the how do you say, they appear to be what evolution will guide towards. From what I've read, I wanted to see, in fact, if that was true. But if you look through the course of history, um, basically things have become more and more structured and Like, I mean, there's been basically less and less violence and whatever, even amongst animals, etc. And generally speaking, amongst people, but not in all periods of history, of course. There's been some violent ones. And as you mentioned now, it does look like we are in a period of devolution, which I didn't think was possible, but it actually does make a lot of sense.
Oh,
Yeah, I do think
it's very.
unless
I mean, if you believe in the theory of evolution to start with, then that means de-evolution has to be possible.
we got to wrap things up, though.
Yeah.
What is there anything you'd like for me to promote before we get things off? Phenom Poker. Anything else?
No,
Any
I
last
mean,
words?
what I'm trying to do here I'm being open to having these conversations and help. I want the community to understand what it is we're trying to do,
Hmm.
more than just getting on podcasts and saying like, play a Phenom Poker or join Phenom Poker. That's not really what I'm trying to accomplish. I think it's already getting out there by way of people getting excited about the idea and being part of the community, and obviously seeing a lot of the names that are supporting Phenom are some of the bigger names in poker. Some of the more accomplished players in poker are getting behind the brand and supporting it. I think there's enough of that, so I'm getting on here just so I can answer the questions. I think, some people don't fully understand what it is, and it's through long form content like this that they're able to get those answers, which I think is very useful. And I think ultimately, I think competition is good. I don't think having one site, even if it's a great site, will ever be a good thing. I think
I
players having
agree.
a choice in a fair market is what's a good thing, right? Because competition forces the operators to um, adapt or die, basically, right? You're either doing the right thing by your customer, or someone will come along and do it. So we're trying to be the person
Right.
coming along and doing it, but ultimately, by doing it, you also will force the existing operators to adapt or die. And the ones that
Right.
should die, right? And the ones that
Yeah.
adapt should continue to live. Like we're talking about the theory of evolution, right? That's the whole idea: adapt or die. And so, yeah, no, I hope the people listening at least give it a try, and come and give us feedback and tell us what we can do better. I'm personally very excited to see something different as someone who's been in the poker industry for 20 years and hasn't seen a whole lot of evolution in the online poker space. I would like to see somewhere a place that I would like to play, somewhere that supports mixed games, somewhere that takes cheating and collusion and all these things very seriously, someone that gives very awesome rewards, and where I can actually participate in the upside of this thing becoming successful, right? Like owning a piece of it. That's pretty cool. You've never been able to do that in the online poker space before. Somewhere that offers instant fund settlement. So as an avid crypto user myself, like I use Web3 products all the time, and I love it that I can just connect my wallet, do something like place a trade or deposit into a
Yeah, that's
liquidity
the perks.
pool.
Yeah.
It's freaking awesome. I love it. I love it. Like yield farming. I think there's so many cool ideas in Web3, and we're starting to see the products get better from the UX perspective. So that translating into poker is very cool for me, right? Like I can I can play some poker, and I can win some money, and then boom, I can buy Bitcoin literally the same day, which someone like Brian Rast, I'm sure would be interested in doing as a Bitcoin maximalist, right? Um, and so yeah, I appreciate you kind of offering your platform for me to be able to talk and answer these questions and just have a fun discussion. And people can decide for themselves whether it's worth checking out.
All right. Thank you, Matt. Thank you for your time. And I really hope you guys succeed and make a difference.
Appreciate it.